Well, hello to our viewers tuning in. You're watching Weekly News Highlights, where we bring you some of the biggest stories that made the headlines this week. I'm Song Yoo-jin, coming to you from Arirang's virtual studio. South Korea is on the verge of clinching a multi-billion-dollar nuclear power plant deal with the Czech Republic. We'll break down the details of the deal and its significance. In the U.S. presidential race, there was an assassination attempt on former president and now Republican nominee Donald Trump. We'll give you a wrap-up of some of the major developments from last weekend's attack to Trump's acceptance speech. Finally, some good news on the economic front. South Korea's forecast is looking brighter, with two international financial institutions projecting a rosier outlook for the country's growth this year. We begin on the domestic front this week. South Korea is just a step away from clinching a nuclear power plant deal with the Czech Republic, outbidding France. Our senior presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports on this landmark project and what's left to seal the deal.
South Korea's state-run power giant has been named the preferred bidder to build at least two nuclear plants in the Czech Republic, marking a major feat for the country's budding export industry and President Yoon Suk-yeol's sales diplomacy. Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala said Wednesday that a South Korean consortium led by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power won the hotly contested tender to build reactors at the Dukovany power plant, beating France's EDF in all criteria assessed. Fiala said two more reactors could be built at the Temelin plant. South Korea's presidential office expressed gratitude for Prague's decision in a briefing Wednesday evening.
This makes KHNP the preferred bidder for the construction of two Dukovany nuclear reactors, and if the Czech government decides to proceed with the construction of two Temelin reactors, KHNP will also be the preferred bidder. This comes 15 years after winning the country's bid to build the UAE's Barakah nuclear power plant in 2009, and it will be the foundation for our exports to Europe, the origin of commercial reactors.
The two new 1,200 megawatt units will cost about $8.6 billion each, according to the Czech government, with the final deal signed by March next year. Seoul attributed the success to the solid trust between the two sides, built over 34 years of diplomatic relations, and public-private cooperation between businesses, industry workers, government officials and citizens involved in Team Korea's bid, offering low construction costs, top safety and technological standards, to deliver completion on time within budget, as shown by the Barakah nuclear project in the United Arab Emirates. Since his inauguration in 2022, President Yoon Suk-yeol has actively promoted South Korea's nuclear power exports, holding more than 150 summits with 100 leaders of government. His office noted that he'd met the Czech Prime Minister on 3 occasions, including in Washington, D.C. last week, and even sent a letter presenting a vision for bilateral cooperation in nuclear energy. The Czech Republic aims to phase out coal by 2033 and increase its energy security by expanding nuclear power production. KHNP's APR 1000 reactor can produce around 1.2 times the annual power consumption in Prague, according to Seoul's trade ministry. A presidential official said Seoul hopes that securing its bid to work on the Czech Republic's plants will lead to more opportunities in the European markets, boosting investment and employment in South Korea's nuclear power ecosystem. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Shifting focus, recently there has been a noticeable increase in the number of elites defecting from North Korea. This week, South Korea's National Intelligence Service confirmed a senior diplomat from Pyongyang defected with his family late last year. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jung-sil has his story.
A senior North Korean diplomat based in Cuba defected to the South last November. On Tuesday, the National Intelligence Service said that media reports on the defection of a North Korean counselor of political affairs in Cuba were factual. The NIS gave no further details. A South Korean newspaper, the Joseonilbo, reported early Tuesday that 52-year-old Lee Il-gyu fled to the South with his wife and children. Lee, a leading expert on relations with Cuba, reportedly left around the time South Korea was actively communicating with Cuba ahead of establishing diplomatic ties in February. He told the paper any North Korean resident would think of wanting to live in South Korea at least once, adding that he felt irritation with the North Korean regime, pessimism about the future, and desire to escape these as his motivation for fleeing. Lee's defection made headlines as he is one of the highest-ranking North Korean diplomats made public to have defected in recent years. The acting ambassadors to Italy and Kuwait defected in 2019, while the defection by Tae Young-ho, the former deputy ambassador to the UK in 2016, remains that of the highest-ranked diplomat to come to the South. Pundits say the continued defections of senior North Korean diplomats indicate that members of the elite in the North are becoming increasingly disillusioned with the Kim Jong-un regime. Their situation of being stationed abroad could also make it easier for them to defect. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And continuing our coverage of the annual Rim of the Pacific, better known as RIMPAC multinational maritime exercise taking place in Hawaii, our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung spoke with the commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command on key security issues concerning South Korea and the United States.
In his first interview with the South Korean media since taking office in May, Commander Samuel Paparo of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has emphasized the importance of denuclearization on the Korean peninsula.
The developments in North Korea are very, very concerning to everybody, and we seek the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula at all times. We're equal partners with South Korea. And in the spirit of Washington, we've established a nuclear consultative group. Through the nuclear consultative group, we're in a constant dialogue at very high levels of secrecy to find a strategic way ahead to deal with the issue.
Speaking with Arirang News and 6 other domestic media outlets in Hawaii last Thursday on the sidelines of the Rim of the Pacific maritime exercise, Paparo also responded to questions about the growing calls within South Korea to possess nuclear weapons, including nuclear-powered submarines.
From the standpoint of submarine warfare, I think it's important as allies and partners to find the most efficient and the most effective way as allies and partners to combine our capabilities in ways that most effectively defend our alliances and partnerships. If the operational analysis leads us to believe that, then we can move forward at a later date.
Though the commander did not offer further comments, it was the first time for a top U.S. military commander to directly address Seoul's pursuit of nuclear submarines. Paparo also affirmed that the U.S. forces in South Korea will not be relocated in the event of a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Concerns about a possible relocation have been growing, with China reportedly seeking to build a military capable of doing so by 2027.
Well, we'd have no plans to relocate any of the capability on the Korean peninsula just because of the solidness of our alliance. And any combat plans that we'd have would be global plans to deal with all threats.
The commander also praised South Korea's leadership role in the Indo-Pacific.
So you ask about Korea's leadership role in the Indo-Pacific. And I think the ambitions of Korea's leadership says it all. Global, pivotal state. I'll also mention, too, the trilateral with Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States. And so Republic of Korea is just expressing a tremendous leadership role throughout the Indo-Pacific and, in fact, through the globe.
The commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command is responsible for U.S. forces deployed on approximately half of the Earth's surface. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In the United States, former President Donald Trump formally accepted his third GOP presidential nomination on Thursday local time, aiming to return to the White House. Here are some of the highlights of his keynote speech on the last day of the Republican National Convention.
I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump formally accepted the Republican Party's nomination to run for president at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Thursday evening local time. Wearing a bandage, Trump gave his first speech since the failed assassination attempt at Saturday's rally, where he was wounded by a bullet. He expressed that he was here only by the grace of Almighty God. During his speech, Trump promised to end every single international crisis that the current administration has created and restore the respect towards the United States. Warning that the world is teetering on the edge of World War III, he vowed to address and change the situation if elected. He also mentioned the raging wars in Europe and the Middle East and conflicts in Asia, including Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. Pointing out the importance of getting along with certain leaders, including those who possess significant nuclear capabilities, Donald Trump mentioned his positive relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Adding that he gets along with the North's leader, Trump suggested that Kim probably misses him. Trump placed emphasis on the economy and inflation and criticized the Biden administration's foreign policy, saying it was destroying the country. Referring to an invasion of migrants crossing the southern border, Trump revealed his plans to deport millions of undocumented immigrants. Trump has also proposed a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods in an effort to protect American industries. Donald Trump has been nominated for the third time in a row as the Republican presidential candidate. Trump ended his speech of more than an hour and a half by calling for unity.
And quite simply put, we will very quickly make America great again.
Whether he will be in a possible rerun against Joe Biden in November's election is uncertain, as the incumbent president is facing increasing pressure from within his party not to run. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
Right, so days before the former President Trump gave his acceptance speech as the Republican presidential nominee, he was obviously nominated as the Republican presidential candidate 2 days after he survived an assassination attempt at a rally. He picked Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, a critic-turned-supporter, as his running mate. For more on the latest on the U.S. presidential race for our weekly focus this week, we're joined by our political correspondent, Shin Ha-young. Welcome, Ha-young.
Thanks for having me, Yoo-jin.
Lovely to have you. So, Ha-young, our first question for you is, let's first talk about the shocking assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, which happened last weekend.
Sure, Eugene. It was last Saturday that former President Donald Trump was injured when he was shot in his ear during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. And video footage shows Trump taking cover behind a podium on the stage in Butler near Pittsburgh after multiple shots were fired. And he was then quickly escorted off the stage by his security guards. And Trump's aides said he was in great spirits and doing well after the shooting, which resulted in an injury to his right ear. However, 2 people in the crowd were critically wounded and 1 was killed. And Trump took to social media some 13 hours after the shooting to thank those who prayed for him and urged Americans to stand united and show their true character as Americans.
In Ha-young, the gunman was found to be a 20-year-old who acted alone, according to the investigation. So please tell us more about the gunman.
Right, as you said, authorities identified the gunman who attacked Trump as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old from Pittsburgh. CNN reported that Crooks fired at Trump from a rooftop outside the rally security perimeter before he was killed by the Secret Service. And the FBI says he acted alone using an AR-style rifle believed to have been bought by his father, and there are currently no public safety concerns. According to the New York Times, Crooks came from a typical middle-class background with mixed political views. He was registered as a Republican while his mother was a Democrat and his father a Libertarian.
And this assassination attempt came about 2 weeks after President Biden and former President Trump held their first presidential debate of 2024, which was televised. So how did President Biden respond to the shooting?
Well, in a primetime national address from the Oval Office on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden warned of the risks of political violence in the U.S., saying it's time to cool it down. Take a listen.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. The political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Earlier Sunday, Biden condemned the attempted assassination of Trump, calling for the nation to come together as one and announcing an independent security review to investigate how the attack occurred. And South Korea has also denounced a shocking attempt on Trump's life. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Sunday posted on X that he is, quote, appalled by the hideous act of political violence, adding hopes for a prompt recovery. Other world leaders, including Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also sent regards to the former U.S. president and criticized the act of violence.
Now, despite the shooting, Trump stuck to his schedule for the Republican National Convention. So please tell us more on how the first day was.
You're right, Yoo-jin. Trump decided not to delay his schedule and headed to Milwaukee on Sunday for the Republican National Convention. There, he made his first public appearance on Monday, 2 days after the rally shooting. And with a bandage over his right ear, he entered the convention arena with a raised fist, greeting cheering supporters. And 2,400 delegates from across the United States gathered on Monday to officially nominate Trump as the party's presidential candidate during a roll call vote. And Trump officially became the 2024 Republican presidential nominee after surpassing the delegate majority threshold following a speech by his son, Eric Trump. Take a listen.
Hereby declaring him the Republican nominee for President of the United States of America.
And Trump this week also selected and announced his running mate, J.D. Vance. So tell us more about him too.
Sure, Trump announced his running mate on Monday, selecting hardline conservative Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his vice presidential pick. And the 39-year-old, who once said he was an anti-Trump Republican, has since become a supporter. And Vance gained prominence with the release of his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, which reflects on his upbringing and growing up in a low-income family involved in violence and addiction in Middletown, Ohio, a part of America's Rust Belt. Trump's decision is seen as a strategic move, as there is anticipation that Vance's Rust Belt background will resonate with voters in critical swing states such as Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Take a listen to what he had to say during an acceptance speech on Wednesday.
No more free rides for nations that betray the generosity of the American taxpayer. Together, we will send our kids to war only when we must. But as President Trump showed with the elimination of ISIS and so much more, when we punch, we're going to punch hard.
Foreign media and experts predict the assassination attempt will impact the presidential race. And with his defiant fist pump, analysts say it strengthened Trump's base and attracted sympathy votes. And CNN reported that his supporters treated him with almost supernatural reverence at rallies, and his image as a fighter who is constantly under attack from his enemies will be even more deeply entrenched.
All right, thank you for your report today, Hayoung. We really appreciate it.
Always my pleasure.
And the attempted assassination of Trump has had a ripple effect, even shaking up the markets. Gold prices in the U.S. soared to an all-time high on Tuesday. Lee Seung-jae explains what drove this price surge and the factors at play.
The price of gold rose to an all-time high on Tuesday amid rate cut expectations and the prospect of a White House return for former U.S. President Donald Trump. Gold futures for August delivery trading on the New York Mercantile Exchange closed at $2,467.80 per ounce, up 1.6% from the previous trading session to set a fresh all-time high. Soaring gold prices come amid market expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will almost certainly cut the benchmark interest rate by September. Gold prices tend to rise when inflation expectations rise or interest rates fall. Analysts also say growing speculation that Donald Trump, who survived an assassination attempt last weekend, would be re-elected is driving up the gold price. The Financial Times pointed out that Trump's tariff and tax cut policies could increase U.S. fiscal deficit and geopolitical tensions, which would boost inflationary pressure and lure investors to safer assets like gold. The Dow Jones also surged during Tuesday's trading session, up 742.76 points, or 1.85% from the previous session, to close at 40,954.48. The index of 30 prominent companies listed on stock exchanges reached back-to-back days of fresh all-time highs as it marked the largest single-day increase in 13 months. The S&P 500 also jumped 35.98 points, or 0.64% from the previous trading session, closing at another all-time high of 5,667.20. While the positive momentum on Wall Street is mainly centered on rate cut expectations, Trump says rates should not be cut before November's presidential election. During an exclusive interview with Bloomberg released Tuesday, the former president warned the U.S. Fed should abstain from cutting rates and give the economy and his rival, Joe Biden, an election boost. According to Bloomberg, Wall Street expects 2 interest rate cuts before the end of the year, including one before the November election. Trump says it's something the U.S. Fed knows they shouldn't be doing. 이승재, Arirang News.
Turning to the domestic economy, the International Monetary Fund and the Asian Development Bank have announced optimistic projections for Korea's economic performance in the latter half of the year. Let's turn to our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin for the reasons behind this positive outlook.
The International Monetary Fund has upgraded its growth forecast for South Korea's economy this year to 2.5%. The IMF, which publishes its World Economic Outlook in January, April, July, and October each year, on Tuesday raised its growth outlook 0.2 percentage points from the 2.3% forecast made in April. The projection is the same as the Asian Development Bank's supplementary growth forecast released on Wednesday when it revised upward South Korea's economic outlook to 2.5% from its April report of 2.2%. And it's also the same as the Bank of Korea's forecast, but slightly lower than the anticipated growth set by the OECD, the South Korean government, and the Korea Development Institute of 2.6%. The boost in South Korea's growth forecast by both the IMF and the ADB was mostly due to its faster-than-expected growth in the first quarter of 1.3% on the back of robust exports. Exports in June saw on-year growth for the 9th straight month, with shipments of chips, the nation's largest export item, surging more than 50% compared to the previous year. As for other nations, the IMF lowered its growth forecast for the United States by 0.1% to 2.6% this year as the labor market shows increasing signs of cooling. But the growth outlook for China was hiked to 5% from 4.6% due to a rise in China's exports and a recovery in private consumption in the first quarter. Regarding the global outlook for this year, the IMF kept it steady at 3.2% with a slightly stronger growth of 3.3% for 2025. While this year's projection was kept steady, it remains tepid considering how the global economy expanded 3.8% on average before the pandemic.
Near-term risks have become more prominent. These risks may result in higher for even longer interest rates, which in turn increases external, fiscal, and financial risks. Additionally, significant swings in economic policy around election could lead to fiscal slippages and heightened protectionism.
And near-term risks aside, the IMF said that policymakers need to make it their priority to restore price stability and that strengthening multilateral cooperation is essential to addressing global challenges. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Moving on to sports news, as we count down to the Paris 2024 Olympics, from this week, we'll introduce you to some of the sports and athletes to watch. Starting with breaking, also known as breakdancing, which will debut as an official Olympic sport in Paris. South Korea's Kim Hong-yeol, or Hong-ten, will be the first Korean athlete competing in breaking. Now, in other sports, Korea has high hopes for winning a medal in archery, especially in the women's team competition, aiming for their 10th consecutive Olympic gold. Team Korea is also looking to reclaim Olympic glory in table tennis after a stellar performance at last year's Hangzhou Asian Games. Here's what some of the athletes had to say.
I want to show the world what the breaking is, especially to those who might not be familiar with this dance. And I hope many people will enjoy it and even try it out themselves.
For us, this is our first Olympics, and we've put in extra effort to get good results. We've worked diligently, hoping that our efforts can lead to a successful outcome.
My goal is to play without regrets, trusting in the hard training I've put effort into. I'll do my best to show my best performance, so please cheer for us.
Now, as athletes around the world head to Paris for the Olympics, some of the world's best ballet dancers from the French capital have come to Korea. The Paris Opera Ballet, one of the most prestigious ballet companies in the world, is holding a gala performance here from Saturday. Here's a sneak peek at the show. With more than 3 centuries behind it, the Paris Opera Ballet is the world's oldest national ballet company. Its finest dancers have come to Korea for the company's second gala performance in the country. Leading the ensemble is Korean ballerina Park Se-eun, who in 2021 became the first Asian dancer to be promoted to étoile, the company's highest rank.
Seoul Arts Center is my favorite stage in Korea. I had the chance to perform several times here about 13 years ago, and I still remember the excitement and thrill I felt on that stage. I'm really looking forward to experiencing those emotions again.
This gala is all the more special to Park as it's her first performance in her home country since becoming a mother. Beyond performing, Park took on the role of producer, carefully selecting the repertoires and dancers for the show.
Preparation was tough since all of our dancers had a busy season with the company. I had to work on the gala bit by bit in my spare time, but I wanted to create the best program possible. Looking back, it's all been worth it.
A total of 10 dancers, including Park, will perform 18 pieces. Among them are lesser-seen works in Korea, such as The Vertiginous Thrill of Exactitude by William Forsyth and Jose Martinez's Mi Favorita.
Typical gala performances focus on technical feats like multiple twirls or high jumps to excite the audience, but I didn't want that. I hope the audience can feel a swirl of emotions that words or letters can't express after watching our program.
Park's visit to Korea this time isn't just about dazzling on stage. It's also about inspiring the next generation of dancers. She, along with fellow étoile Paul Mark, will hold a one-day class for young ballet dancers next Monday.
We want to share how we learn and dance at French ballet schools and within our company. I hope this gives them a chance to experience the French ballet style.
Many young dancers aspire to join our company and often ask how to get in. Our company has changed a lot, even in the 13 years I've been there, so I can't definitively say what Paris Opera Ballet looks for now. But I want to share my experience so they can find their answers.
The Ballet Gala of Étoile in Paris will take to the stage 4 times, starting this Saturday at the Seoul Arts Center's Opera Theater. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News. And that wraps up this week's edition of Weekly News Highlights. Thank you for watching, and from all of us here at Arirang, have a wonderful rest of your weekend.